Welcome back. I'm here today with Greg Pickett. He's the Senior Vice President with Cushman & Wakefield. Greg, welcome to today's show.
Thank you for having me.
So give us, for the listeners here, the background of how did you come to be where you are today?
So when I was in college, my plan was to do accounting. My older brother liked that, and he was saying you should do it. And where I went at Brigham Young University, it was a good program. So I started the process of getting into accounting, and then my father, who's a real estate lawyer, said, I think you have a good personality to be a commercial real estate broker. And he talked to me kind of about the difference of being an accountant and being a commercial real estate broker. And when I looked into it, it turned out my college had a finance major with a real estate emphasis. And I went to one of the classes, and I really loved one of the teachers. It was great, and it got me really excited about real estate. So that's what kind of lit that spark in me. And when I got into the field, it was 2008, which was probably the worst time to get into it. Out of my graduating class of all the guys in the real estate department with me, less than 30% of us had a job coming out of college. And I immediately joined a company called Colliers in downtown San Jose, and I was doing a lot of door knocking, a lot of cold calling. It was rough times, but in a way it was the best time to get started and the best time to learn, kind of a baptism by fire kind of thing. So.
It's interesting, the coming out of school, I guess it's often hard to get grounded because people are wanting people with experience,
yeah.
The employers, and but as you went through this experience of coming in the low point of the market, did at any time you ask yourself the question, what the heck am I doing in the real estate market?
Yeah. I mean, it was me and my wife, and we're pretty much living off of her salary, and she was a nanny, and it was very emotionally taxing as well, just knocking on a lot of doors, making a lot of cold calls, sometimes up to calling 1,000 companies a week, just trying to find anybody that might need real estate advice. And at this time, everybody didn't want to think about real estate, and if they were, it's because they were downsizing. And so it's just kind of a depressing time to be in the market, but luckily the older people that had been in the market that had been doing it a while said, Greg, you're doing really well for a new guy in this market. You need to stick with it. And so I received some encouraging words here and there, and I feel like I was having just enough success to make it so I didn't want to give up. So
now you recently were awarded one of the most successful 40 people under 40 by the Silicon Valley Business Journal.
Yeah.
And quite a remarkable feat, starting in from the bottom of the real estate industry up. What do you attribute that success to?
I'd say a combination of strong work ethic and a little bit of luck as well. Some of the companies grew a lot faster than I expected, so that's always nice. But most importantly, I'd say just working really hard and working with a lot of companies. I would say people in the past that have won this award that are in real estate, sometimes they can usually attribute it to one or two companies that have just really blown up and they're major clients. Myself, it would be more of so that I do a lot of deals every year. I average over 50 tenant rep deals a year, which is extremely high for when you're representing a company, not a landlord or a building with a lot of offices.
Do you have any cities that you specialize in helping tenants with their business expansion?
Yeah, so my range is a little larger than your average broker, and that's because I started my career in downtown San Jose. So I know the South Bay really well, but I grew up in Los Altos, close to Palo Alto, and so I was recruited by a company a year and a half after I got started, went to the Palo Alto office. And so most companies, I can help them, whether it's from San Jose all the way up to San Mateo. And then after that, I could still help them if they're looking at other markets, but I always bring in a market specialist.
I'm visiting here today with Greg Pickett. He's the Senior Vice President of Cushman & Wakefield. Greg, I need to take a quick break.
Sure.
And we'll be right back after these messages.
Sounds good.
I love fishing, with my family.
I think it would be easier to use a net.
It was so much fun.
The times when we are together, it makes it all the more worth it.
Having Dad teach them how to cast a fly rod, and
as long as we're doing stuff together, we're having fun.
Some people see a father and a son fishing together, while others see a succession plan.
Welcome back. I've been visiting here today with Greg Pickett. He is the Senior Vice President of Cushman & Wakefield. And Greg, in the first segment, we had talked about you being in Silicon Valley for your career. Started at the bottom of the market. You made the list, Silicon Valley Journal, the top 40 under 40. Congratulations. And but I want to move into years ago when I first came to the Valley. People would say, if you want to find a really successful company, you drive around late on a Saturday afternoon, you see where's the parking lot filled with cars. Is that still true today?
That is still a saying that is true today, yes. But I would say because of influences, you've got Google and Facebook, big recruiters, but it's a nice place to work. It's pretty cushy over there. So a lot of these tech companies, if they push the hours too strong, they're going to lose talent to people to go into Google and Facebook where they can leave work before 5 p.m., get free lunch, get massages, So, but these young grinding startups, yeah, they are there on weekends. They're there till late at night. A big question I get asked these days from a lot of these smaller startups is, I need a place where they don't cut the AC off at 6 p.m. or if they don't have it turned off on the weekends. I need full access to it because they're working all hours.
Ironically, I was over recently to Facebook and on campus, and of course they have all the food courts, and then you walk down, and I looked off to the side, and they had a wood shop. I was thinking of cabinets. I thought, okay, that was over the top.
Oh, but, yeah.
That's what Silicon Valley is, I guess, for competing. But I want to go into industry. So is there a trend that you see in the industry, the types of clients you see yourself more often working with?
I have found some companies grow when I wouldn't have expected them to grow because of the industry, and then some of them that I think might grow quickly don't grow that much at all. So I kind of go after it with a wide net. And I work with so many different types of technology companies, but typically the ones that you see the fastest growth are, a lot of the software companies, some of the video gaming companies, they can grow very quickly, whereas biotech companies, they typically grow a lot slower, especially when it has to do with FDA approval process.
So when you look at, do I want this client versus do I not want this client? How do you screen through the process, good versus bad?
It is so tough to do that. I work with a lot of incubators, and I get so many startups looking for space, and it's very hard at that early stage. Well, who am I going to work with? And I have found that a lot of times I do it based on the person. Is this person a good, honest person that I'm going to enjoy working with? If they're going to respect my time, and if they're good people to be around, because I'm going to be talking with them on a daily basis, I'm going to be out in the car with them, showing them spaces, then that's good enough for me to work with them if I enjoy being with them. And then a lot of times I look and see who's backing them, who are their VCs, who is involved in their seed round, who's involved in their Series A, and that's pretty telling right there as well.
It's interesting that I guess in any successful business relationship, it always is that two-way street.
Yeah.
The client's not just interviewing them, but you're also interviewing.
Yeah.
It's also working vice versa there.
Yeah.
So when we're looking at Silicon Valley today, are there any areas that are more attractive than others for relocating companies or expanding in?
Yes, definitely. So, when you look at Silicon Valley, I would say the heart of Silicon Valley, the place where everybody wants to be if they could be, would be downtown Palo Alto. But space is so limited there, and it's so expensive. So that's kind of the starting point when a lot of companies in this area are looking at space. That's the ideal place. And then you kind of look out from there. Most every company wants to be close to a Caltrain because so many young people are living up in San Francisco these days. So you kind of look at the Caltrain stops, and those are the areas where you're going to find a lot of tech companies, mostly between Sunnyvale and kind of Redwood City area. And then San Mateo, downtown San Mateo is becoming popular, and you're getting a lot of these young companies wanting to move up to the city. I'd say whenever the founder of a company or the CEO is younger than 35, there's a decent chance they will want to move up to this city because a lot of young talent up there. But then the companies that want more experienced talent, older people with families have been doing it for a while, they typically want to stay in Silicon Valley, or the companies where the leadership is already based out here, older people that this isn't their first rodeo.
When you're looking at lease rates, and I know this is a very broad question, so maybe we could talk from a percentage standpoint, but if you're comparing a Palo Alto lease rate versus a San Francisco lease rate, are they comparable? Is there one that kind of weighs more heavily than another for expense?
Downtown Palo Alto is still more expensive than San Francisco. San Francisco has seen a huge increase over the past couple of years. And so it's very high now, but it's still not as high as downtown Palo Alto. But San Francisco, there's a lot more space there, right? So, that's why now a lot of companies are looking at going there because they could save a little bit of money by going to San Francisco than they would staying in downtown Palo Alto or downtown Mountain View. But they're starting to get very close. San Francisco's been getting more and more expensive, and it's been getting closer and closer to the areas down here.
I'm visiting here today with Greg Pickett. He's a Senior Vice President, Cushman & Wakefield. Greg, I need to take a quick break, and when we get back, I want to delve into outlook for the market for the future.
Yeah, that's a big question.
We'll be right back after these messages. Since you can't take your wealth with you, spend time with your family. Welcome back. I'm visiting here today with Greg Pickett. He's the Senior Vice President of Cushman & Wakefield. And Greg, over the break, we were talking about these trends of 2008 to today. Everything has just come so far, so fast. And, I hear just the word on the street is companies, as they're trying to expand, they're finding it more challenging to fill the space with employees. What do you see the outlook for the future in real estate market here in the Bay Area? How are you addressing?
That's the golden question. That's what a lot of my clients are asking me right now. Some of them are very nervous because we'll found a beautiful space, but the landlord will want us to commit to 5 years. And a client will be like, Greg, what's the market going to be like 18 months from now? What if we wait 6 months? And then what if we put off kind of our headquarter expansion? And so I would say, I do feel like we're at a very high point in the market. The question is are we going to keep going up or are we going to go down? We are seeing some signs that we've seen in the past, which means, we might level off a little bit. The residential market is getting a little soft. You're seeing some companies start to sublease out more space. And then, as you mentioned, you're seeing a lot of companies starting to open up offices elsewhere because it's not only is real estate expensive out here, but more importantly, the salaries you have to pay are very high out here. So you have a lot of companies that are saying, well, why would I put my sales team here when I could get a phenomenal sales team in Atlanta and the salaries are much lower out there and the office space is much cheaper as well. And so you're seeing companies opening up offices in other places, but the backbone of a lot of these companies are engineers, and the talent is out here for engineers. And so you still do have high demand for engineers out here, and there's a lot of, engineers haven't made out here.
And I hear that's true. I mean, we, our firm, CPA firm, has worked with venture capitalists for over 50 years, and one thing they always say that Silicon Valley differentiates itself by the amount of innovation that happens here, and people innovate in good and bad markets. I want to talk about the style of San Francisco, Facebook. There seems to be more open architecture, and are they still creating playgrounds even though inside these campuses, even though the real estate space is so expensive?
Oh yeah, for sure. It really is awesome being out in Silicon Valley because we really are the center of innovation for the whole world. This is where all the VCs are. Then you've got the major tech companies of the world, Google, Facebook, Apple, all headquartered here. And so it's always interesting to see, where the architecture trend goes. And right now the trend is open space, exposed ceiling, lots of natural light. And we're seeing a lot of buildings, especially in San Francisco, a lot of these old brick and mortar buildings where they are just going in, blowing everything out, exposing the ceilings, putting in cool hanging lights, and companies love that. It's a very popular trend right now. And we saw over the past 5 to 6 years, we've seen the trend go in that direction where it's mostly open space. And then in the past year, we've been actually seeing a trend going back a little bit towards having some more private offices. And I'd say that private offices aren't for individuals, they're more like small conference rooms. A lot of these companies that get into a space where they only have a couple conference rooms, they're noticing the conference rooms are always taken. And people are going out in the hall to do calls. People are going out on walks to do calls. And so I've been getting a lot of clients lately say, our space is a little too open, we need to plan for more conference rooms on the next expansion.
Yeah, looking back, early 2000, NUMMI shuts down the plant, Toyota relocates down to San Antonio. You had Oracle moving out, I believe it was Austin, opened a big campus in Austin, Texas. Adobe, big campus over in Salt Lake City, or south of the Point. These companies that are trying to address the labor pool issue by expansion out of the area, what advice would you have, or what have you seen with the real estate? How does, your overall impression?
Yeah, I would say it's always, there's so much talent out here. It's always good to have a headquarters out here. You might not want to move your headquarters elsewhere, but when it comes to getting talent like a sales team, there's a lot of other talents that you can find in great areas like a Utah, and it's much cheaper to hire, and it's always good to look in those markets. But I would say save that when the company is a little bigger. A lot of these companies, they might spread themselves out too fast, and then that kind of hurts the culture of the company. When you're a smaller company and growing, I think it's good sometimes to kind of all be under one roof. Because you're fostering this culture of what your company's going to be. And then when you get to that stage where you're, over 50 employees, that's when you can really start looking at expanding in other areas. So,
and as you look at trends today, you still see the market strong and vibrant as it was.
Yeah, even though I mentioned those signs earlier that we might be leveling off a little, at the end of the day, there is still so much more demand than there is supply. And that is still the case today, and as long as that's the case, it's still going to be a strong market. There are still so many companies out looking for space in certain areas, and in those areas have very little space to be leased.
So Greg, a new client coming to you. I have a young company. I expect to be growing and expanding. And what types of process would you walk me through to help guide me? How much space do you need, and at what time do I need to, switch from one location to the next?
Yeah, and that's a tough question for these young companies, because at first they're more important. Their priority is growing their company. They don't really like to think about real estate, but then all of a sudden they realize, well, this landlord wants me to sign a 3-year lease, and I don't even know what I'm going to look like in a year. So if you're a brand new company, I always say, okay, how many people do you hope to have by the end of the year? And is flexibility more important to you, or is getting the best deal price-wise more important? Because some of these companies, they would rather sign a 3-year deal and get a good rate than pay a premium to just do a 1-year. Finding that most young companies, they like that flexibility. And so you get a space that they can kind of grow into for a year. But the beauty of this market is if you go into a really tight market and you get a space in a tight market, it's typically very easy to sublease out that space when you grow out of it. And so that's the bonus to going to an expensive area like a downtown Palo Alto or a south of Market in San Francisco, is you could sign a 5-year lease there, and if you grow out of it in a year and a half, it's very likely you'll be able to sublease it out and not lose any money. In many cases, companies are profiting off from it.
So Greg, if a person wants to contact you, how would they go about that?
They could shoot me an email, or they can give me a call. 650-320-0226 is my office line.
Say that once more.
650-320-0226.
Okay, and that's Cushman and Wakefield.
Cushman and Wakefield.
And then
I'm in their
email?
Palo Alto office.
Okay.
And email is greg.pickett at cushwake.com. CUSHWAK.
Been visiting here today with Greg Pickett. He's the Senior Vice President, Cushman & Wakefield. Greg, thanks for being on today's show.
Thanks for having me.